man, Trump is always finding new ways to go lower and finding new ways to embarrass the country. And to some extent, you wonder if it's performative as a means to distract from the gutting or the attempted gutting of the judiciary and our government institutions, or if that's just him, if it's a combination of both. It's hard to say. But he's still the president of the United States. His word carries weight, and we need to go and listen to him. So after this intelligence disaster, this fiasco where a journalist was added to a Signal group chat where they were posting fire emojis after discussing where and when they were going to bomb the Houthis, after that was reported, and it was, quite an embarrassing scandal, and he had previously said it was actually his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who had added the journalist from The Atlantic to the Signal group. Now he's saying, well, actually, I think it was an unnamed Mike Waltz staffer, maybe, I don't know, maybe an intern, maybe a secretary, maybe the guy who works in the mailroom. Some guy somewhere, who, I don't know, but it was someone else, not Mike Waltz, who could have gone into his phone and got him in somehow. And look, if anybody else here used Signal, you have to be the one to add him. So either this guy or girl, this worker, who he will not name, went into his phone, added the journalist to his phone, then added him to the group conversation afterwards after being able to get into his phone, which would then be its own separate security issue, wouldn't it? Actually, I don't know if that's better or worse. What's worse? Is it worse that they added a journalist by accident to this this Signal group chat we're discussing bombings, or that the national security advisor can have his phone sitched by one of his staffers and gone through and manipulated without him noticing? And the only reason he would notice is because the news report on it. That's not a good excuse. In fact, I think that might actually be worse. But let's listen anyway.
What it was, we believe, is somebody that was on the line with permission, somebody that was with Mike Waltz, worked for Mike Waltz at a lower level, had, I guess, Goldberg's number or called through the app, and somehow this guy ended up on the call. Now, it wasn't classified, as I understand it. There was no classified information. There was no problem, and the attack was a tremendous success. So I can only go by what I've been told.
Timing, location, aircraft, like all this, be classified.
I wasn't involved in it, but I was told by, and the other people weren't involved at all. But I feel very comfortable, actually.
And if it isn't classified, the immediate follow-up Greg Kelly should ask is, when will the full text conversations be posted so we can have that level of transparency that Trump said he was going to give in the government, which we're not getting much of. Okay, we have a lot of weird stuff to go through here. I don't know where to start. So God, I really don't know where to start. So I think we're going to start with, let's start with the somehow the least crazy stuff. Okay. We're going to start with Russia. This is Donald Trump talking about the negotiations with Russia. Now, recent polling indicates that only 27% of Americans have confidence that this effort that Trump is engaging in to bring peace between Russia and Ukraine is actually going to work. So he's lost the trust of the vast majority of the American people on this issue pretty quickly, which isn't surprising if you say, oh, I'm going to end in 24 hours, and negotiations still haven't started, right? And the ceasefire you were able to negotiate has already failed. You know, it's not something that inspires confidence. And I think the concerns of many of his critics, as he was getting ready for this job, that he didn't have a plan, he didn't know what he was doing, probably was true. But he still has to answer questions about what to do. And now that we're going into April, and the Ukrainians have agreed to a full across-the-board ceasefire, they've agreed to a naval ceasefire, they agreed to an energy ceasefire, they agreed to an infrastructure ceasefire, and it is the Russians that are dodging these. They're dodging a civilian infrastructure ceasefire after agreeing to it. They're dodging the civilian infrastructure, violating it, causing a spiral there. They're dodging completely a full across-the-board ceasefire, which is what Trump demanded of the Ukrainians after he cut off aid to make them agree to a 30-day ceasefire. Then he says, great, we got it. Russia, they say no. And what's our response to them? Oh, well, what can we concede to them to get them to the table? It's a negotiating tactic that I think is kind of naive, but one thing I've worried about is one of the worst outcomes is not even that the negotiations just fail outright, because if they fail outright, then maybe that would allow some avenue for somebody to say, okay, policy failure, let's do something, maybe. One of the worst outcomes is the Russians just kind of keep kicking the negotiation can down the road as they try to conduct more large-scale offensives, in return for the negotiations going forward, only getting things that could help them on the battlefield, i.e., hey, no energy infrastructure strikes that could undercut us funding our war effort with our oil refineries, which we now have an energy ceasefire. Hey, we want to be able to import agricultural goods, whether that's going to be, you know, big machines that, you know, farm our fields, or agricultural drones that can load up bombs, who knows? But we need to remove some sanctions. It's a strategy that could drag this out and turn a 24-hour promise to, I mean, are you even going to get it done this year? And so here is Trump talking about the possibility for the first time of the Russians really dragging their feet. And his response to if they're doing this is, I don't know.
We're hearing that maybe Russia is dragging its feet at this point, and Zelensky has shown some openness, especially after what happened in the Oval Office a few weeks ago. Is that accurate at this point?
I don't know. I mean, I'll let you know at a certain point, but I think that Russia wants to see an end to it, but it could be they're dragging their feet. I've done it over the years. You know, I don't want to sign a contract. I want to sort of stay in the game, but maybe I don't want to do it quite.
I don't want to sign a contract, but I kind of want to stay in the game. What would that imply? Staying in the game, continuing the war. Cards, games. For somebody who talks about this war in a really apocalyptic World War III messaging, it's always kind of like toyified. You know, you want to jump off on the old negotiation Nintendo.
I'm not sure. But no, I think Russia would like to see it end, and I think Zelensky would like to see it end at this point. We had a case last week where Ukrainian soldiers were surrounded by Russian soldiers, and this was not good.
He keeps saying this. This is a lie. This is directly from the Russians. It's been corrected a million times over. This is a lie. The Russians told him that the Ukrainians were encircled in Kursk. They weren't, and he's gone back to the American public and repeated it again and again and again and again, even though we have reports, exclusive reports from Reuters, indicating that the president has already been briefed that there was no encirclement. There is him, as of today, still repeating this lie. At some point, unless there's a brain problem, naivete cannot be claimed.
And I think I had a big impact on not having all of them killed, but they were killed. It's a bloody war. You know, they lose 2,500 people on average a week. Think of that, 2,500. They're not Americans, but
some of them are.
It doesn't matter to me from that standpoint.
We're hearing that.
Okay, well, he doesn't have the same stance in Gaza, so I don't buy that. I don't buy it. One more, and these are terrible statements. These are statements where he's lied. Well, this last statement is a statement where he lied. This, in any other context, in any other political environment, that would be a scandal in and of itself. Lying about an active military operation after undercutting our allies. Here is Donald Trump complimenting Chuck Schumer and talking about how he was killed by his own base, and how he wrote him a thank you letter for passing the Republican continuing resolution completely unchanged with all of their priorities.
So I wrote him a letter when he said we shouldn't go out, and he was right about that. He was killed, but I wrote him a letter saying, "Dear Chuck, congratulations, you made a great and wise decision, and it's really good for the country what you did." Well, he got excoriated because of that letter, because they thought I was doing a little bit of shtick on him, and I wasn't. It was a serious letter. He did the right thing, but he's been absolutely killed by his party. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he makes it or doesn't make it. I really don't know.
Now we get into the stuff that's even wilder somehow. First, we're going to start who will allow transgender everybody. Quote of the year.
Before I read some of these deals that are made by my predecessors, And it's almost like saying, how could anybody allow this to happen? Like, as an example, who would allow men to play in women's sports? Who would allow transgender for everybody? Who would allow open borders?
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does transgender for everybody mean? Does that mean that anyone could be trans? Or that we're gonna make every transgender for everyone? The Democrats are loading up the needles, the HRT like needle guns right now. They're gonna be going home to home, room to room, kicking in the door. This was on. You guys didn't see that in the DNC platform? Well, you should have read the fine print, you fools. You only stopped it by that slim of a margin through those House seats. Republicans hold. Transgender for everybody. He doesn't understand the issue very well himself. I mean, look, you listen to Matt Walsh, and this is supposed to be like they're like right-wing gurus on this issue. He goes on Joe Rogan's and he thinks like millions of kids are getting sex reassignment surgery. He's completely on another planet. He's completely outside of our stratosphere. Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. The easiest is men and women's sports, and then that's like it, really. Oh, and then like the bathrooms. That anywhere, you can't get any deeper than that. And so the problem is that this is really shallow. And there's already polling indicating that the majority of the American public don't want anything to do with delving into trans issues. Just from a general philosophy of I want to grill and we need to deal with the economy, buddy. And I'm not saying that there isn't trans issues to deal with, like the suicide rate there is. I'm just saying that most American people are like, fucking not my business. And that's just how America is. And so he doesn't have a lot of talking points to throw out there. And so he's just trans. That's what it's going to become eventually. And you watch as they can continue to reduce these slogans, simplify them, dumb them down more and more. And you see how the Firefox has changed their logo to make it more and more simplified. The 2024 Republican slogan is just going to be trans, but with an exclamation point, like it's scary. Trans, like, you watch.
As soon as I heard that, I said, if they're serious about open borders, every jail all over the world is going to be emptied out into our country. And that's what happened. We're getting them out now. You wonder who would allow this. Are they stupid, or do they truly hate our country? It's the only thing you can think of. A lot of people say, well, it was really because of the election. What they want is they want the votes, but they cheat on the election. They don't need to do it this way. They don't have to destroy our country this way. But
we cheat, but we lose.
We had a great election. We had a great mandate.
We cheated. We had all these chambers of power, but we just decided to just like lose by 200,000 votes in swing states this time around. Okay, now let's get to the two wildest. So number one, it's a question from the Newsmax host asking Trump, and this is the news organization they brought in to kick out AP and replace them with others, asking him about whether the blowing up and firebombing against all these Teslas is connected to left-wing billionaires like George Soros in any way. Is there any coordination or funding to these attacks? And Trump just says, yeah, I guess, whatever.
Tesla violence. Have you heard anything about billionaires on the left, whether it's Soros or somebody else? Have you heard anything about planning, coordination, funding for these attacks?
I believe that is part of it. Yeah, there are some of them that were involved with my trials that were, I think, probably involved with that also. And, Elon's done a very good job. He's found tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse, like levels you've never seen.
What is this pit?
People that don't show up to work and they get checks. I mean, so many different things that you can't even go over. It is so much.
He just believes it. You can't even go over all the stuff he's eliminated because there's just so much of it. We couldn't even name one because there's just so much of it. Dude, I couldn't. This is like beep writing, man. Okay. Now, for what I have to say, in my opinion, is the wildest moment of the whole interview is these two back to back. Donald Trump, he said on the campaign trail he was going to pardon the J6ers. J.D. Vance went out there to try to do disaster control. Said, wait. We're not going to pardon all of them. Just the non-violent ones. We're not going to pardon the violent ones. And then Trump pardoned the violent ones. And so that means the people who beat cops, those who smashed windows, all of them got off. Now, one of those guys ended up having a shootout with a police officer because who would have thought that somebody who tried to overthrow the government would be an unhinged freak? And there was been other instances of people getting involved in criminal activity. Won't be surprised as we see more do the same, because they've not only been, let go, these people who are dangerous, but also many of them have basically been rewarded, not only through the president pardoning them, but also through social rewards, being rewarded in right-wing circles, being rewarded by welcoming them on podcasts, getting big social media accounts. But I guess that was not enough, because apparently Trump is now saying that he wants to create a compensation fund with American taxpayer dollars to pay J6 criminals, the people who stormed the Capitol, the traitors who tried to overthrow the United States government because they didn't like that they lost an election. He wants to give them taxpayer dollars. He wants to give them your money that you have to pay into the government. He wants to give that to them as a compensation fund for the terrible atrocities they faced by, facing the consequences of their own actions. Let's listen.
No, but I took care of them. I said I was going to, and I did.
Is there any talk of, because they lost opportunity, they lost income, any kind of compensation fund?
Well, there's talk about that. We have a lot of people talk about it. A lot of the people that are in government now talk about it because a lot of the people in government really like that group of people. They were patriots as far as I was concerned. I talk about them a lot. They were treated very unfairly. The thing they show is they show a group of 1,000, whatever it may have been, 1,500 people down. What they don't show, you never see the crowd that day. It was the biggest crowd
He pardoned those people. You saw the violent 1,000 to 15,000 people. That 15,000 people is a lot of people. But he pardoned them too. That would be a decent point if he pardoned everyone who didn't do a violence. He pardoned the most violent people
I've ever spoken before.
And now he's entertaining on live television for the whole country. Maybe we give them taxpayer dollars too. Let's give the people whose only requirement was that they beat a cop over the head so they could overthrow the government your money.
It went all the way to the Washington Monument. It was so wide, you virtually couldn't see anything else but people.
Who's going to compensate them for the wood for the gallows they constructed?
Show that whether it was 1 million people or less than 1 million, I don't know what it was, but I see Bernie Sanders has a few people out there. They say, "Oh, the crowd is so big." They don't talk about the crowds, but a group of people went down there peacefully and patriotically. Remember that.
He just said there was 1,000. They only show 1,000 to 15,000. So was it peaceful or not? He acknowledges some were violent, that they only show the violent ones, but then he just says it was completely peaceful after just acknowledging there were violence in the same clip. This logic does not make its own sense. It doesn't make sense to itself. Following this up, I do want to say it's not just the possibility of real financial and legal compensation and pardoning and martyrdom for the whole movement, but the martyrdom of specific individuals as he creates saints for the Trump and MAGA movement to carry the coffin of in their crusade against the deep state, to replace it with Trump's own stupider deep state. Stupider not being a real word, but that was the point. Whatever. It didn't work. I'm a big fan of Ashli Babbitt, and Ashli Babbitt was a really good person.
Family of Ashli Babbitt is suing the government.
For those who don't remember, Ashli Babbitt was the person who stormed the government, went into the Capitol, then tried to get to the legislators and jumped over the last barrier between the rioters and the stormers and those who were actually trying to solidify the vote. So the legislators. She jumped over the last barrier after being warned not to, was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer. That's who they're talking about. And she was there to try to stop Biden from being certified and to make Trump president.
Family of Ashli Babbitt is suing the government, wrongful death. The DOJ right now officially is still opposing that lawsuit, trying to justify it. Shouldn't that be something that can just be settled at this point?
Well, I'll look into that.
Listen to that. It's not even like, hey, should this be appealed? Should we let the system? Can we just settle it? So it's like this reporter is just asking for a lump sum for Ashli Babbitt. Like, look, I understand there's like a court system and they were like, did you do an abuse? How about we just give her money because she was a Trump supporter who died?
I mean, you're just telling me that for the first time. I haven't heard that. I'm a big fan of Ashli Babbitt, okay? And Ashli Babbitt was a really good person who was a big MAGA fan, Trump fan. And
she's a good person, and then the only qualities he lists is that she likes Trump.
She was innocently standing there. They even say trying to sort of hold back the crowd. And a man did something to her that was unthinkable when he shot her. And I think it's a disgrace. I'm going to look into that. I did not know that, no.
And the officer who shot her, Michael Byrd, is still on duty. They gave him a raise, and they gave him a medal, and I believe a promotion.
I think it's a disgrace.
He's a federal employee. Would you or could you do something about that?
I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to look at that, too.
Punish those who defended the Capitol. Reward those with fame and fortune, those who tried to overthrow the government. He looks out for his own. The thugs, that is. You know what? I don't think I'm going to vote for Trump again. I don't think I'm voting for him again. Who's with me?